Hey, thanks for joining me. Ultimate X-Men, the Ultimate line. That is a whole pile of comics that deserves a lot of attention because it's so interesting. It when it come out, as far as I recall, it was pretty damn successful for when it started and was successful for several years. It was going strong for quite a while. My good friend Mitch over on Blood Force Mitch, his channel. A lot of you know who he is. If you don't know who he is, go follow his channel. Just type in Blood Force Mitch, and you'll find a channel, and you'll find a guy who does. We kind of do the same thing. We talk comics and we make comics on our own, and then when we review books, we kind of talk about them from a perspective of guys who make our own stuff. And it's a good channel to go follow. But he recently reviewed what's it called? Ultimatum. It was like the storyline that kind of like brought about the end in terms of what I recall as interest in the Ultimate line, because it just went into really weird directions. And part of the problem with the Ultimate line is with a lot of the books, not all of them, but they were filled with, as my friend Mitch said in his video, filled with characters that no one likes. These are versions of these characters that no one likes. Now, I read Ultimate Spider-Man in its entirety. It went 130 issues, and I thought it was brilliant from beginning to end. Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley did 100 straight issues, and then Stuart Immonen picked up the tail end of that, and it was still great. And they kind of retold the basics of Spider-Man's story from kind of a fresh modern-day perspective, and it was great. I thought it was fantastic. And the next best one was the Ultimates, which is just a version of the Avengers, which I reviewed Ultimates Volume 3 because it was more about looking at Joe Mad's art rather than the fucking awful story that they did in Volume 3. But Volumes 1 and 2 by Brian Hitch on art is some of the most beautiful comic art I've ever seen and some of my favorite stories. Those characters were mostly the correct versions of the characters that we know. Where Spider-Man was like, he's a good character, he's a good human, he's a good kid. He's who Spider-Man should be. But like I was saying, a lot of these Ultimate line characters were versions of these characters that were like complete unlikable assholes. The Ultimates, the Avengers, that are called the Ultimates in this universe, they were kind of straddling that line from being kind of the characters that we liked, but also being not nice versions of themselves. It was an interesting balance. X-Men was filled with a bunch of characters that kind of only looked like the X-Men in an outward appearance, but they were, in retrospect, I look at them and I'm like, what a bunch of fucking pretentious douchebags. I do not like the story retroactively that went on at Ultimate X-Men, because the X-Men, when I think about them, the best versions of them are the Claremont era and then the Jim Lee era, which is where I kind of jumped on as a teenager. So I've got a kind of a personal affinity for those characters. But everything that was great about those characters when Jim Lee was working on them was because of the stories that Claremont set up. The X-Men were like, you could get into the minutia and get into the weeds of Claremont did some weird stuff. But forgetting that, basically speaking, he made all these characters like likable, believable characters. They're good human beings. They're good people with human flaws. And that's what made the X-Men interesting as they went on to be superheroes and fight things and fight for human rights and save humanity and defend humanity against evil mutants and everything. This Ultimate X-Men shit, it's like trying to be so edgy and cool. They're stripped of all their humanity, and rereading it. This is a collection of the first 3 issues, so we're going to kind of blast through these 3 to kind of get you an idea for those who either haven't seen it or haven't seen it in a while of what they're like. And now, in itself, just reading it, you could read this and go, because this is a brand new introduction of the characters. This is starting fresh. That was the whole point of the Ultimate line. Just wipe out decades of continuity and reintroduce all these characters right now, brand new, fresh, and kind of distill them down to who they really are. And I gotta say, I don't care for the writing of Mark Millar on this. He's written some stuff that I like. I like Mark Millar in general, just as a guy. There's some things he's written that I think are great, and there's some things he's written that I'm like, it's trying too hard to be cool, to be edgy, to be modern in the time when this was put out, which is 2002. So this is quite old. You know, it's over 2 decades old. I get why at the time it probably seems like it was, when it comes out, it's like this whole brand new fresh take, and so they can up the stakes on this stuff and make it more edgy and more dark and more realistic and more violent, which I guess I'm kind of fine with. It just depends on how it's played out. But man, does this thing, I look at it retroactively, like I've said, and I'm like, I don't like it. I really fucking hate this cover. That is a Joe Quesada cover, which it does not look like his work unless somebody tells you it's him, and then you look and you're like, oh, okay, I think I see it. They did a lot of this like computer painting over it. I think it's terrible. And boy, do they fuck up Wolverine in this series. Everyone's unlikable, but especially him. But especially Magneto. We'll get to it. But we start out, Mark Millar, writer, Adam Kubert. With he's the penciler with Art T-Bear, inker. God, I know there's Adam and there's Andy. I thought Adam drew Fantastic Four, Ultimate Fantastic Four, but that must be Andy on the Fantastic Four. Adam here. I like Adam Kubert. He's got some weird kind of artistic kind of things that are just kind of a little bit goofy here and there, but overall he's a pretty exponentially talented guy. And again, this is 20 years ago. We start out, just some random people looking up, back behind them. Something scary is coming, maybe. It's got their attention. The text says sometimes it's dangerous to be a little different. Like, okay, you get that, especially if you know the Xmen concept. Now, that is a hell of a shot, overhead shot of the city being swarmed by Sentinels everywhere. I do have to say, like, again, when I say I don't like this book, I mean, there are elements to the story that the way it's told, I do like a scene here, a moment there. It's pretty dramatic, and the art is pretty dang good, all things considered. But when I say I don't like it, it's kind of like when you read the entire thing as a whole, I'm kind of like, these versions of the X-Men in this universe fucking suck. I don't like any of these people, but it starts out like, if you don't know anything and you're just reading it fresh, it's kind of exciting. Sentinels coming down, and they just start shooting into the crowds, vaporizing various people. Now, if we know what's going on, they're blasting mutants, right? That's how these things go. Sentinels land down. They're looking through their kind of computer vision. They're like, mutant gene confirmed. Proceed with termination. So these go and like stomp these. Like, they vaporize them. They shoot them. They crush them to death. Now, I was reading this and I'm going, I don't care what version of what world you're living in. If the government sent giant 100-foot tall monster cyborgs, like robots, into the city, and they just started indiscriminately vaporizing random people, even if they're mutants, this would never fly. You know, like, they just walk up and just stomp them to death. So I'm like, okay, they better have an inciting incident that at least pretends to justify this. You have to, and they do. But at first I'm like, this is so not happening. You know, no one would, like, the country would tear itself apart. So now we get into some news articles. And this does give at least a validation on some level. So all these news articles or TV reports, like, you know, top story, the trial run of the Sentinels is hailed as a triumphant success as a mutant nest in Los Angeles is uncovered and neutralized with no civilian casualties. So now they're saying, were these mutant terrorists behind the recent anti-human bombings in New York and Washington? Police say the evidence is undeniable, but human rights campaigners have said that the action is inhuman and unconstitutional, etc., etc. So they are basically saying, like, it is interesting that the Sentinels just show up and start vaporizing randos in the streets, and they're referring to just the random people as mutant terrorists, even though they're talking about beings who haven't actually committed anything, but because they're mutants, they're just instantly terrorists. But they do say that there are some mutant terrorists who blew up some buildings in New York and Washington. So the mutants have been extremely dangerous in this world. So they're implying the idea that humanity has these superpowered beings that are out there, and they're extremely dangerous. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. I mean, if we think about it, if there just could be like people out there roaming the streets and you can't see that they have these abilities where they can like run super fast or walk through walls or control your mind or touch things and make them explode. What if this person just has a bad day and they decide to blow up a hospital, which is shit that happens. Like, imagine that in the real world. The society would fall apart. So it's, it's a interesting idea to kind of dig into. So then they talk about a recent broadcast from Magneto, the master of magnetism, the death cult's self-appointed leader. So now here we got Magneto. He's like, man is a parasite upon mutant resources. He eats our food, he breathes our air, and occupies land which evolution intended for Homo superior to inherit. Naturally, our attacks upon your power bases will continue until you deliver this world to its rightful owners, but your replacements grow impatient. So if you have someone putting out a kind of a broadcast that says that, he's just like, it doesn't matter. Humans are an infestation on this planet, and we are going to eliminate you, and we can do it. And you consider the power set that these characters have. I gotta say, there's an argument to be made for the response of these Sentinels showing up and just vaporizing things, considering that they're already bombing and they're saying, we are going to kill you. And if you don't give up, it's going to be a violent destruction, leveled upon you. So now that doesn't justify vaporizing innocent people, but the stakes are crazy high instantly. And Magneto, there's no heart and soul in this man. And I got to say, my memory of the story of Magneto, because again, in the regular X-Men comics, the regular Prime timeline, we kind of like Magneto. You understand it. He's got a heart. He's got a soul. He's seen some horrible stuff. He's been on the side of the X-Men multiple times. He led them before. You like him. He just goes off in the direction of evil sometimes, and he is a bad guy, but he's not without heart or understanding. This version of Magneto, he never this is just showing that he's bad, and he just gets worse. Like, he's got no sympathy to the character at all. And that's kind of indicative of all these characters in these books, to my memory. Again, it's been a long time since I've read the entire series, and maybe we'll go through the entire thing. I've got them all. I mean, why not? I got a channel to put content on. But yeah, Magneto, he's like, I'm going to kill you all. So they talk about how they hooked up with former NASA engineer and Sentinel designer Bolivar Trask, and they created these machines and blah, 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 blah. Then you cut to a bar, and you got a big, giant guy sitting here getting some shit from a dude who, this is Hank McCoy. This is Beast. And the guy's giving him shit. He's like, yeah, you got to be a mutant, right? And Hank's like, yeah, just leave me alone, buddy. And the guy's going to ball up and smack him upside the head with the cue stick. But of course, Beast jumps, does a jump twirl. This is kind of a weird pose. It's a little goofy, but whatever. But he lands and does this foot uppercut kick to the guy's jaw, sends him flying, to show you what a badass Hank McCoy is. I gotta say, this is one of those things that in retrospect, I don't like, because every character is just so fucking cool. And I say that not meaning it. They're not cool. They're it's like forced coolness. Like, what a badass he is. I mean, he's got a big Hawaiian shirt and a bandana, and he just casually walks away and flips a coin and gives a quip. Like, he's not scared of anything. He's just such a pretentious badass, and that's fine. But when everybody is that way, I'm like, this is kind of hard to enjoy these characters. But as he walks out, he runs into Jean Grey, and she's like, hey, it's kind of a weird place to find a guy like you. And he's like, well, who the heck are you? She's like, I'm the best thing that's happened to you since they started doing Reeboks in a size 42, handsome. So you got Jean Grey. I get the point that they're trying to make these characters a little different and a little edgy for 2002 and more modern at the time. So Jean Grey has short hair and wears tight leather pants and a corset kind of thing, shows a lot of skin, and she's just an unbelievable badass. Just like Hank McCoy is. Everyone's just an unbelievable badass. But she's showing up. So if you kind of follow along, you're getting the point that we're recruiting mutants. This is because, again, this is a storyline. This is a universe where none of these characters are together yet. This is our introduction to these characters. So jump to another place. Jean Grey, she stops in at a cop, and she's using her powers to make him be very susceptible to suggestion, right? She shows up, and I'm here to find someone that you've got locked away. They go into the back of the jail, and there's this girl. It's Storm. They're like, oh, yeah, she was stealing stuff. Because remember, Storm's a pickpocket. So they let her out, and Jean Grey's running off with Storm. And Storm's like, you're not another one of Magneto's stupid lackeys, are you? I've already told him I'm not interested in enslaving the human race. And Jean's like, relax, sweetheart. My name's Jean Grey, and you're working for the competition now. So this is another thing that I thought was kind of weird. Because, again, you have to gather these characters together. But Jean Grey just shows up and says, hey, Beast, you don't know who we are. You don't know what's going on. You just know that mutants are hunted. Come with us. We're going to form a fighting team. Hey, Storm, you've never met us. You don't know what's going on, but join us. We're going to form a fighting team. Cut to another scene. You got some guys delivering it's like a mobster kind of meetup with some big, scary-looking tall guy in heavy shadow. And they're like, hey, this is all crazy, and this is all, they're doing illegal shit. But then other guys show up in a helicopter. There's going to be a big fight. And so machine gun blasts start unloading on everybody. And, of course, the guy who is the deliverer, the courier of the package here, it's Colossus, of course. And they're like, the bad guys are like, oh, dear. And he's like, my thoughts exactly. Great shot, tilted, low angle. It's a good way to show an epicness of a character. But again, he's just such an epic badass. Just like Beast, just like Storm, just like Jean Grey already. They're too cool to shit. I'm like, ugh. So again, it starts to feel pretentious and fake edgy. And I'm already kind of like, oh, this is not. But then Jean Grey shows up. And Peter's crying. Okay. She's like, I know what you're thinking, Piotr. You think your cover's blown and you're all alone. And you might as well stand here and wait for the Sentinels now that the word is out that you're secretly a mutant. And she hugs him. And she says, but you're wrong. You're not alone. Welcome to the Xmen. So this guy who they know nothing about, except that he's like a courier doing some illegal shit, because he's a mutant, he's an Xmen now. Again, I get the point. This is a gathering of heroes, but you can't just show up and you're on the fucking X-Men. You could argue that Professor X has already seen into the minds of all these characters, and he knows that these are people to trust. These are the people that we want. I guess. So now we're at the Xavier's Institute for Gifted Children. We see a bunch of feet walking along the grass, and then, of course, we've got Cyclops. And he's supposed to, I think him and Jean are supposed to be 17 years old. I'm pretty sure it said that in here somewhere, and I might have skipped over it. But he looks like a grown fucking man. And then again, look at his tight leather. He's thrusting his chest forward. He's got some douchebag stubble on his chin. He's just too fucking cool. They're all just too cool. Their costume designs, again, I get it. For this universe, for this world, it's got to be something different. Not their bright, colorful, flawlessly perfect Dave Cockrum costume designs. So it's going to be a bunch of leather, but it's infinitely less interesting. But it's a new world, right? So he's like, anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Scott Summers, and as long as we're in uniform, you'll get used to calling me Cyclops. Now, before we meet the professor, I want to run you through all your individual code names one more time to make sure we're all on the same page. And she's like, I can't believe you're calling me Storm. And he's like, I'm Colossus. And Beast, Hank McCoy's like, am I the only one who finds Beast kind of derogatory? And, of course, Jean Grey is saluting. He's like, Marvel Girl, reporting for duty, Cyclops. And he's like, knock it off, Jean. Oh, my gosh, they're just so edgy. So they go walking through the mansion, and they're like, how do you got a bunch of people renovating your mansion here? And how do they not see what you guys are? And he's like, Am I thinking of something else? I might be thinking of a different part of a different comic. I swear that they were saying that that the professor was blocking the minds of these guys so they only see um, what he wants them to see, so he doesn't see mutants. I wonder if I read that in a different book. Anyway, whatever the fuck. They are talking about here. They're like, you got a beautiful school, but what kind of principal designs black latex uniforms for his impressionable teenage students? Again, these are all supposed to be teenagers. I don't like the idea that they're just that young. It doesn't make sense for them to look this buff, this old, this mature, talk and act this way, and they're fucking children. But Cyclops is like the kind of mutant who wants the mutant gene we're all carrying around to remain undetected by the Sentinels. The uniform is a cloaking device. So as long as you're wearing these outfits, the Sentinels can't track you down. Oh, yeah, duh, right here. Yeah, they're saying, aren't you worried these painters will tell someone you're running a safe house for illegal mutants? And then in their heads, the professor has, I placed these fine gentlemen in a post-hypnotic trance when I hired them. You could fly a plane down the corridor and the poor devils would be convinced they're looking at a wasp. So, yeah, I knew I saw that somewhere. It's just right in front of my face. But they're on their way in there, and they're like, holy shit, is someone talking in our head? They walk into a library, and there's Professor X. And so here's a giant room, and there's this long little things hanging down there to Cerebro, right there above his head, and a fireplace. And so Hank McCoy's like, this is a stupid question, but is it a room still a library if it doesn't have books? And Professor X is like, well, I'm like you, Hank. My ability to read at speed is at the point where I can't turn the pages fast enough. So he says, I prefer to sit here instead and read the minds of my favorite writers as they type the story out. You'd be surprised how many good ideas never make it to the printed page. That's another idea that's kind of, it's not a good character trait to know that the professor is kind of reading other people's minds when he really shouldn't be. But again, you could make the argument that his brain is so powerful, it just picks up on all this stuff. Anyway, so now they just kind of start talking about what's going on in the world. Hey, you guys are being rebaptized as a post-human being, and using these code names. It's an idea Magneto and I came up with a long time ago, a name which describes your own skills and personality as opposed to those of a long-dead ancestor. And they're like, well, I thought you had nothing to do with Magneto. She's like, well, on the contrary, there was a time when Magneto and I were like brothers. I helped him build his sanctuary and the Savage Land and all that stuff, but unfortunately our friendship didn't last forever. Colossus is like, what went wrong? And Professor X is like, well, let's just say we had something of a falling out. And using this art to show, like, obviously Professor X got his spine shattered by some metal pole from Magneto. They obviously had their falling out. We all kind of know the basic story. But, Professor X is explaining to them that he says, I've long held the opinion that the only guarantee in a confrontation between man and mutant is the extinction of both sides. That's why I escaped here and formed the school. It's why it's essential that I found you before he did. Make no mistake, children, we're here to stop a war. Colossus says, how'd you manage to find us anyway? I've always been pretty careful about covering my tracks. He's like, well, the same way I found the young man who couldn't control the beams from his eyes, and the 16-year-old girl who could lift weights with her thoughts. The Cerebro system. So obviously the computer thing that he puts on, and he kind of explains how he can kind of track people and mutants. Like we all know the Cerebro kind of thing. And he says, actually, right now on a bus, there's a kid who's running away. He's scared. He's terrified he might be a mutant. He doesn't even know what his abilities are. His name is Bobby Drake. So Iceman. So now we cut to sometime later, the X-Men. Again, all these characters are just thrown together and they're on a mission already. They don't know each other. They haven't fought together. I mean, I think they do say something about how they spent some time training. But they're just out together. Like there's no build up to the team. They're just like, they're together and they're on a mission, and they're trying to track down this Bobby Drake. They're trying to find Iceman, and they're like, oh wait, something scary is going on. Guess what? The Sentinels are here. Giant shot of them landing in the city. They pick up this bus because they can detect Bobby Drake. And like the Sentinels, I guess it looks like they're blowing up the bus, but then they're like, Beast, he's running away, and he's got Bobby with him. He's like, well, now the Sentinels they've identified me. It doesn't matter if I'm wearing this cloaking thing. They've seen me, so they know that I'm a mutant. So it doesn't matter. I'm being tracked now. So now the X-Men have to do some cool shit. And so they start going after Storm. They're like, Storm, you can generate a freaking lightning bolt. Let's go. You got these powers. Let's get your powers going. Let's go. And she's like, you don't understand. The last time I tried to use my powers, I almost electrocuted an entire playground full of 12-year-olds. So she's scared of her abilities. She doesn't know how to use them quite yet. And Cyclops is like, this isn't open to debate, Storm. You either pitch in and help, or we're all sleeping in a shallow grave tonight. He's like, come on, don't make me get on my knees and beg here. She's like, all right, I'll try. But she says, but don't blame me if I wipe out Manhattan by mistake. So Storm conjures up a lightning storm, and Sentinels turn and look, and a couple of them get blasted by lightning. 3 of them, 1, 2, 3, get blown up. And they're like, holy shit. So much for the girl who couldn't control her powers. You just took out 3 Sentinels in a single strike. But Storm, the exertion of that has knocked her out. She's unconscious on the ground. That's kind of an interesting kind of concept, especially for someone to like conjure up that much power and she's not used to it. That's kind of cool. But meanwhile, they're like, Beast, Colossus to Beast, do you still need that backup? And Beast is like, yeah, no, I'm kind of doing okay, but this is going to be kind of tough. So they show that the Sentinel's blasting at Beast as he keeps jumping around, carrying poor Iceman. Well, it's not Iceman yet, but you get the point. And he kind of positions himself. This is kind of an interesting story point. Hank positions himself on the corner of a building where he's flanked on each side by 2 Sentinels, and they're both holding their laser blast hands up. And as they fire, he jumps out of the way and the Sentinels blast each other. I think that scene actually works really well. And the storytelling, the visuals tell it perfectly. I like that shot of them blasting and blowing each other away as Beast jumps out of the way. So, good job, guys. What is it? This is Jean Grey, and she's like, one of the Sentinels that Storm blew up, he's still kind of going. The top half of his body is still crawling around, but he's malfunctioning. He's actually going after normal people. So Colossus gets up, picks up a giant truck, smashes it down, blows up the Sentinel. Then he gets blasted away by another one. So Cyclops gets there with his optic blast. He starts taking shots at the Sentinel, but he's kind of like taking little weak pot shots at it, enough to get the Sentinel to pick him up intentionally. And so then it is kind of weird how the Sentinel picks him up and holds him way above his head like this. And Cyclops is saying, I know what you're thinking. Incidentally, you think the only way I can release an optic blast is to press the button on my visor, don't you? But he's got a little trigger button for his visor on his little glove. He's like, bad news, dumbass. And blasts down right into the Sentinel's head, blowing him away, taking out the Sentinel. So Cyclops gets dropped, and Jean Grey, of course, uses her powers to like casually, like slowly lower him to the ground. And another Sentinel is coming for them, and Bobby Drake says, will everyone just shut up and get down? I thought that was kind of a dumb bit of dialogue. But it's all like angsty teenager bullshit. But he finally lashes out, and he fires a big ice blast and freezes a falling Sentinel so it doesn't crush and kill people. They're like, way to go, Bobby Drake. And he's like, holy shit, did I do that? And there's like, ladies and gentlemen, a round and applause for the Iceman. But then while they're kind of celebrating their stopping the Sentinels, the humans throw a bottle of something and it cracks Iceman right on the head. And Beast is like, you fucking idiots, you just split his head open. And all the humans are saying, good. I hope the only good mutant is a dead mutant. And the X-Men are like, we just saved your guys' lives. And Cyclops is trying to calm them down. They're like, guys, it's not worth it. Let's just get out of here. So they dip. They get the hell out of there, cut to the Savage Land. And you got Magneto here, and he's talking a bunch of evil shit. And they're like, it looks like my friend Charles Xavier is alive and well, gentlemen. He thought he was dead, but he's out there. And Professor X is recruiting mutants. And, yeah. he's like, well, my former friend Professor X is out there, and he's forming a resistance to fight against me. So you can, the conflict is obviously coming up. That's a pretty epic shot of Magneto. He looks appropriately evil. So Magneto has a conversation with some terrorist who screwed up, and Magneto's like, I don't allow people who screw up within my midst. He's like, hey, you still got that pacer in your heart, right? And the guy's like, yeah. So Magneto pulls it out of him, kills the guy, and so now the guy's dead because he kind of failed, and so he doesn't suffer fools. Magneto's like, Scarlet Witch, clean up this mess, please. And then so Magneto's walking out with his son, Quicksilver. And he's saying, Charles has resurfaced Quicksilver just as I always knew he would. He's established a little power base for himself in North America and assembled a camp to rival our own. And Quicksilver's like, just tell me where he is and I'll promise he'll be dead between your next 2 heartbeats. And Magneto's like, oh, shut up, Pietro. Charles would close your mind down before you're halfway across the Pacific Ocean. I need a qualified assassin to find him and kill him before he converts any other young mutants to his naive integrationalist ideals. Tell Wolverine he has a new assignment. And so it cuts to Wolverine. He's an assassin that works for Magneto. Oh, God. Again, story-wise, it's structured. It's kind of like a big epic movie or something like that. And there's a lot of big, awesome action pieces, but it's just everything is thrown together so fast. And there's too many moments, as I've pointed out, where it's like, oh, this is epic and this is so badass. And this is so... Aren't these characters so cool? They're so much cooler than those boring old versions you used to know. And it's, again, to start out, it's kind of an interesting spin because you don't want to make it exactly like the other characters because then what's the point? But again, I'm not feeling the heart in these characters. I think I'm going to stop right there. I definitely am going to get into issues 2 and 3 here real quick. But for just this one video, that's just issue 1 of Ultimate X-Men. It's, again, it just kind of depends on your personal interest. Like, artistically, I think it's great. The storytelling works really well, and it's got all the kind of the basic tropes of X-Men, but just the way it's being thrown together so quickly. You're like, hey, I just found you. You were in jail. You're on the team. Hey, big guy, we just found you. You're on the team. Hey, Beast, you're at a bar, and you got nowhere else to go. You're on the team. Hey, Bobby Drake, I bet you he's on the team. He is. That comes up in next issue. So, and then, of course, Wolverine's going to have to join the crew. It's kind of hard for me to kind of accurately explain what I really feel about it. I mean, I think I have, but it's just more like, as a single issue, it's kind of fine. But when you read the entirety of this thing and compare it to the classic stories of X-Men that you've already read, it's just kind of soulless and it's heartless. And I don't like any of these fuckers. Not one of these characters do I like. Wolverine's my favorite character oftentimes, especially back in the day. And this version of Wolverine fucking sucks. It's just a soulless kind of hollow shell of the characters that we know. It's like they took the characters and removed their soul and just left kind of like vacant zombie bodies that say cool things and wear leather and shoot things. And that's all they are. And that's what it ends up being. It's kind of a shame when Ultimate Spider-Man by Bendis was so good. And the Ultimates was so good. Ultimate Fantastic Four, I remember liking it. I just don't think it really connected with everybody. I've got those books out too. I'll be getting into Ultimate Fantastic Four soon. But for right now, that's issue 1 of Ultimate X-Men. I'll hit books 2 and 3 soon enough here. But it's just kind of more of the same. It's good, but it's okay, but anyway, that's all I got for now. Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'll see you next time.